recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
What's up, you pencil neck geeks and pervs? Welcome to the WrestleFetish podcast. The new Attitude Era is upon you. This is your boy, the Darkitect, speaking. Somewhere under there, in a wonderful vest and hoodie combination, the Doctor, Tyler Lemco. How you doing, buddy?
You know, man, best day ever.
You know, I got asked recently if you were a real doctor, and I said that that's sort of in the eye of the beholder, really, you know. Then they asked what you're a doctor of, and then I hung up the phone.
That's a perfect answer.
Yeah. So
I always go vague and then hang up.
There you go. And of course, our fucking new IWGP predictions, pay-per-view predictions champion, Annie fucking Cruz. What's going on?
What's up?
How are you?
I'd like to thank all the people. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm good.
How does it feel to be the champion? A joy that Tyler hasn't really experienced solo yet.
My first thought was, since you guys tied, does that mean I have to wear the GIMP mask, just to balance it out? Or does that mean all three of you guys have to wear a GIMP mask now?
See, I don't know if that was the bet for every pay-per-view, but I almost feel like, because you've come out as the champion now, that I think maybe Tyler has to do it. I think maybe that's kind of what's going on here.
I mean, at this pace, I should just have the GIMP mask.
Well, from GIMP mask to GIMPs, the Jabroni Josh Martin. I didn't forget you today. What's up, buddy?
Oh, hey guys. I'm just having fun in Cancun right now. It's nice and warm.
Is that right?
Good. It's great weather out here. I also brought my TV and my entire dresser to Cancun with me.
I'm about to say, a lot of personal items it looks like you brought. Your dresser.
I don't know how to close drawers in the dresser. It's a whole thing.
I get it, man. Anything you got to do to feel comfortable, my friend. Let's get into it. We got another exciting episode, of course, after the love, the hate, the in-between from last week's epic episode with AEW president and owner Tony Khan. You guys get any love this week online from that interview?
Yeah, I got some people being like, what's this podcast with like no episodes and why do they have Tony Khan? And then I'd be like, yeah, it was one of our first, and people were blown away by that. So kudos on the booking committee here.
Hell yeah.
The booking committee
I had people texting me. They're, how did you get Tony Khan on your podcast? And I'm like, thank Chris for that one.
I had a lot of people like, I saw a lot of people like sort of like backpacking off of our tweet and being like, at Tony Khan, you want to come talk to us on our podcast? I thought that was hilarious. And then of course, a lot of the Conan keeping it 100 fans didn't take so kindly to Tony calling them out last week. But hey, it's all fair love in wrestling, and it's always interesting to be called a mark by people who take offense to what a promoter says to another promoter, especially when those promoters have worked together for years.
And I find it so funny when wrestling fans call other wrestling fans marks, as if like we don't all just love this thing.
Yeah, we all love an awful thing. And, I guess that's the toxicity that comes with it. You know what I mean? I encountered it a lot when I was working in comic books as an editor, and you go to Comic-Con and it's like, a bunch of guys dressed up as Jedis walking by a bunch of guys dressed in like Star Trek officer costume. Like, ugh, look at these fucking dorks. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
It's a flawed logic.
Nerds?
Yeah.
It's a flawed logic to be like, you're dumb for liking the thing that I like.
Yeah. Right, 100%. But I'll live it. I'm Mark. But today's topic, well, speaking of toxicity on the internet, is heel turns. Because, yeah, we had a lot of people turn heel on us after the interview, and we had a momentous heel turn at this past weekend's NXT Vengeance Day. And so we figured that that would be a good topic for us to talk about today. But before we get into that, we'll talk about our highlights for the week that was, because we don't, do the full reviews anymore, unless you're a member of our Patreon, patreon.com/WrestleFetish. And I'm going to give us a quick shout out, actually, to, I want to talk to Ryan H. Thanks so much for being a patron. John Puckett, thank you so much, too. They're both members of the Fetish Fantasy League. Ryan H. is actually beating us all in Fetish Fantasy League. So
he's in the inside. He works for WWE.
He must. So he's definitely on pace to get a prize at the end of the season. If you want to join, like I said, patreon.com/WrestleFetish. That's where you get our weekly review podcast, as well as join the Fetish Fantasy League so you can get your picks in to compete against us and maybe win something. Haven't told you what it is yet, but it's going to be good. I promise. I won't let you down.
It's not a gimp mask.
Definitely not a gimp mask. Not anymore, at least, because Tyler just fucked that. But yeah, like I said, it will be good. We won't let you down. And yeah, so speaking of not letting us down, I'm gonna go first because my highlight of the week was not Nia Jax's hole, even though the WWE seems to have embraced her hole quite fully at press time. But I'm actually gonna give it to I'm gonna give it to the fucking what you call it? Which match? What did I want to get? You know what? I'm just gonna give it to the whole of NXT Vengeance Day. Josh texted us in the fucking I didn't even mean to make a whole pun there, but I did. But Josh texted us in the group chat that we got going on and said this might be one of the best takeovers ever. And I'm hard pressed to disagree with the man. I think that, I mean, from top to bottom, it was just top notch wrestling. The big angle that they did to end the show was great. I mean, every match was different and delivered on every promise that it made. I mean, we got a sort of debut of a new superstar, even though LA Knight might be the worst name that I've heard in the last few months of a new superstar, but whatever. Yeah, fucking, not to say that any takeover has been poor, in my opinion, but, during the pandemic, it hasn't had that same, like, big time feel that a lot of the other takeovers have had, and especially with the proliferation of like the NXT specials that we've had recently, like, oh, we're doing Halloween Havoc, we're doing Great American Bash and things like that. To have a fucking pure takeover to be this impactful, this fun, this newsworthy, even it was good times. Good times. You guys, I imagine you watched since we were all competing.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Although you just said the name LA Knight, and that like rang a bell in my head, and I'd looked it up. The LA Knights is the team that Lil Bow Wow played for in Like Mike.
Oh, shit. Oh, that's true. Do you think that that's like a connection or a prelude to Bow Wow eventually making his debut in WWE? He's been very vocal about it on Twitter, at least.
True. You never know. But yes, great pay-per-view. Fantastic matches. They all got decent time. They weren't similar in any way. They were all like individually their own story, and they were all fantastic.
Can't argue with it. Josh, what's your highlight of the week, my friend?
Sticking with NXT Vengeance Day, I haven't had a good Gargano match, I feel like, in forever. And that match against Kushida was probably one of the best matches I've seen in a long time. It really showed Kushida fucking making that next step up to a fucking where people in America know who the fuck he is.
I love that they let Kushida wrestle like Kushida, where he can attack one part of you and just stay on it, throughout the duration of a match and just find an armbar out of nowhere. And because we talk about all the time how so many WWE wrestlers have this sameness to their matches, right? It's like, there's a back and forth or a heels in control, a couple signature moves. NXT likes to do a whole lot of false finishes and then done. But there isn't like a Zack Sabre Jr. who like his technical prowess is where it's at and what's featured in each of his matches. They got some high flying guys, but I feel like they don't even let those guys do a whole lot anymore. Like the big athletic spots are pretty much saved for pay-per-views now. It's not like AEW matches where everything that can be done in a wrestling ring is done in a 6-minute period. But I really enjoyed the change of pace. And then I'm with you. I think Kushida didn't look bad in his loss. I think that he looked like a legitimate threat. They followed up on that on Wednesday with a win for him. So, it doesn't look like he's getting buried after this.
And also, just same with Vengeance Day, we had probably the best match of the year so far. I think with Finn Balor and
Yes.
100. Pete Dunne might be one of the best matches of the year so far. I think it was a crazy great match.
Someone pointed out, and I noticed this. Ever since he stopped putting belts in his mouth, Pete Dunne's acne's kind of cleared up. Like he is all of a sudden pretty smooth and babyface.
Not just that, but he also looks like he's leaned out too.
Yeah.
Like he was a lot thicker and stocky before. But I like seeing him lately. I'm like, he looked like he leaned out a lot. You can see it in his face.
So.
Like there's definition. He looks like chiseled all of a sudden. He was
you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, before he was. It wasn't like he was out of shape before, but he definitely was a little bit thicker before, and now he's like you can see more of his muscles.
I thought women like thick things.
We do, but we're not going to get into this.
So you guys think there's a correlation between having a lot of leather in your mouth and sort of puffing up and getting acne?
I mean, the science shows it's a 100% now.
That's why you're the doctor.
It's gonna be funny. Like Pete Dunne's it's going to be kind of like Eddie Van Halen, because Eddie Van Halen had like mouth cancer because he would keep a metal pick in his mouth like all the time. And they think that's why he got that, and it's gonna be just Pete Dunne's gonna have mouth cancer just from a belt in his mouth.
All the leather that he's put in his mouth.
Yeah,
that's not from some kind of BDSM implement. That is.
I'm about to say, I'm glad I keep most leather out of my mouth.
I can barely say leathers.
That's true.
Hello.
It's an amazing main event. I mean, again, Finn Balor did a interview recently that WWE put out where he talked about how he just felt really out of place his whole time on the main roster in WWE. And I mean, again, just letting Finn be Finn or letting Finn be Prince Devitt, essentially. And the guy can go. The guy can fucking go. And he's way more than that demon gimmick that we haven't seen since his return to NXT. Like, it needs to be about this guy being an elite athlete, elite performer, and that's why he's at the top of the mountain, not because occasionally he can turn into some like monster or something.
Well, he's even said himself too that it almost felt like the demon gimmick was kind of a crutch for him, especially when he was on the main roster, because it was kind of like, and it also kind of lost its allure at some point too when they decided to just, we're not going to surprise you, because it's one thing whenever a pay-per-view would happen and then we're getting the Demon King, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it was like from 2018 or something, where he just showed up, like they were promoting it or whatever, and it just kind of lost its allure for me at that point. But he himself has said in interviews that it kind of became a crutch, and it's kind of nice to not see that from him now. Although he has said recently that potentially he'll probably come back
Oh,
at some point.
the demon is never too far away. Never
Yeah.
too far away. And there's a lot of face paint backstage.
I have a question. Is Pete Dunne the originator of like the whole joint manipulation thing, or has that been done on a main stage?
I'm pretty sure he's not the originator. I mean, a lot of British and Japanese wrestlers do that. I just think that maybe zoning in on the fingers is kind of his thing, but I've seen those spots before in the past. I'm not Jim Cornette and not gonna be able to tell you who's who's the originator of it all, but yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen the spot, but I've never seen it be like someone's offense like built around that, which is cool to see in wrestling's like 100+ years old, and there's still guys like building their whole gimmick off of something new. It's cool to see.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's what we always talk about, things that distinguish you as a wrestler. So you're not just that other guy. And main roster WWE is so much about here's Drew and here's Roman and everybody else. You know what I mean? Pretty much. Annie, what was your highlight of the week?
Not to agree just because all of you guys agree, but I would have to say the NXT pay-per-view as well as a whole. And I mean, honestly, when have you ever been disappointed by an NXT pay-per-view though? Can you even say that? Can you even say that you've ever been? Because I can't say that I've ever been disappointed by any NXT pay-per-view. I thought, just like you guys have said, every match was different. I mean, everything from Shotzi and Ember coming out, cosplaying from a horror film, that was pretty fucking cool. The Gargano match that was pretty fucking solid. At some point I thought, oh shit, I'm gonna lose this one, but then Gargano ended up taking the belt. So and then of course the Pete Dunne Balor match was probably the highlight of all highlights of the entire pay-per-view for me as well.
And let us not forget the Io Shirai, Mercedes Martinez, Toni Storm.
That was a pretty good match too.
Yeah, Mercedes looked fucking great in that match. I think she looked way better than Toni Storm in that match.
Wait a minute, Tony, he didn't mean that. He's in a haze from being in Cancun and the too much sunlight. He probably doesn't use
pina coladas.
Yeah, exactly. Tony, you looked amazing. You were the best thing about the match. You're my favorite wrestler. If Juice Robinson, starts tripping out, look, I'm always here for you. I'm going in a weird direction. But that was a great match. It was a fantastic match. Yeah, Mercedes looked like an absolute beast. Tony was so strong that she broke a table with just a look. Just a look. I would probably pass out if she looked at me in the eyes. You know what I mean? So I get it. I get the spot totally. Tyler, what was your highlight of the week?
Well, NXT was great, but I'll say something else just so it's not a 4 for 4.
Sure.
I think on this podcast we tend to do a lot of shitting on the AEW women's division, and I thought Serena Deeb and Riho had a great match, a fantastic.
Dope.
And I didn't realize that Serena Deeb was like the Straight Edge Society.
Yeah, she had her head shaved by CM Punk in the middle of the ring once, and became part of that clique for a while. No, she's a great performer. Look, Riho is a good wrestler. Riho has the personality of a rotary phone. You know what I mean? Where there's something interesting about her, but ultimately boring. Not like that new girl that I think AEW signed. What is it like? Oh God, it's like Mito something. She's one of the Joshi wrestlers that everybody's all super excited about. She's having a Twitter war with Jim Cornette right now. Whatever her name is. But Yeah, she looks very interesting. I can't wait for her to show up. But yeah, this was definitely atypical of what AEW usually does with their women's division. And look, hopefully the tournament is what's going to turn things around for them. A lot of people were complaining about the production value of the tournament on YouTube because it's very indie and not up to the production standards of like a TNT. But you know, we're
But,
used to that sort of thing, so I'm
and
fine.
that's kind of the beauty of AEW is they'll put out like all these guys have their own vlogs too. It's very digital age, which
Yeah,
I agree TV shows should be high production, but if it's on the internet, it matters a little less.
that's how I feel about our podcast as a whole. And so all you guys that are talking about our production value, fucking right, It's the internet. Get used to it. I'll give an honorable mention so that we're not just talking about NXT. You
Retribution.
can hate me all you, no, but you guys can hate me all you want. Bad Bunny's the best superstar in the WWE. I'm saying it right now. He's the best thing in the company. He's selling all the merch, taking the bumps. He's the 24/7 champion, which I haven't been interested in half a year at this point. The guy gets it. He has the hardest entrance in the WWE and the best merch. Maybe he's the guy right now. What are we talking about? What are we talking about?
He's even the best actor.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He gets it. Like you could
That's actually a good
tell
point.
he's not like a tangential fan of wrestling. Like so many of these celebrities are like, oh yeah, I like wrestling. No, this guy's in it. This guy fucks with it, and it's like Pat McAfee, where as soon as he showed up, you could tell he just got it. You know what I mean?
There's a difference between a celebrity fan and a celebrity mark.
Right.
100% a celebrity mark.
Absolutely. Are you excited at the prospect of Bow Wow versus Bad Bunny at WrestleMania for the 24/7 championship? Josh, tell me why this would be your match of the year.
Oh, this is just Lawrence Taylor all over again.
That the plan is Bad Bunny and Damian Priest against Miz and Morrison for Mania.
Probably. But
Which I think is, it's cool and it's great for Damian Priest.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are our highlights for the week that was. Like I said, again, if you want to hear us talk about it, all things AEW Dynamite, WWE Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, NXT Wednesday nights, go to patreon.com/WrestleFetish. You'll get our weekly episode review there. But to go back to TakeOver, we talked about the ending and how after Finn Balor was able to successfully defend his title against Pete Dunne, I believe the run-in was by, what do they call themselves, the King of NXT, Lorcan and Birch, to assist Pete for a beatdown of Balor. He was saved by Kyle O'Reilly, which was followed by the rest of the Undisputed Era. There was a quick little moment between O'Reilly and Balor saying, hey, look, we respect you, so these guys are cool. They're not going to do anything. And no, boy, did they do something. Because not only did Adam Cole super kick Finn Balor, he super kicked Kyle O'Reilly. And Roderick Strong looked somewhat confused. Bobby Fish, yes. Bobby Fish still nowhere to be found. Who knows where his loyalty is going to lie in all this. But it looks like Adam Cole has turned back heel in his pursuit of the NXT Championship. And there's no time for friendship when you're a bad guy who wants the world title. So, like I said, we wanted to talk about wrestling heel turns and how they've impacted us, how they've impacted the business, what are some of our favorites, what are some of our not so favorites. Doctor, why don't you, in your medical erudite, learned terms, tell us, explain to the layman people who may not be marks, what exactly a heel is, and conversely, what is a baby face?
Okay, so let me just take a look.
You get your notes. Yes, absolutely.
A heel is bad guy, and babyface is good guy, and heel turn is when good guy go bad guy.
Okay, perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself.
The question for you: Do you have those notes written like with a crayon?
Like letters backwards and stuff.
Again, you can't understand anything that Tyler writes. Like in true Doctor fashion, anything he writes looks like a serial killer scribble. But no, yeah, absolutely. Well done, friend. So yeah, the heel turn is essentially when a good guy wrestler who we're all supposed to cheer for and be behind and root for, all of a sudden turns his back on all of us fans and decides to tell us to go shove it and goes to the dark side, as it were. I mean, yeah, like that's pretty much the greatest heel turn in all of cinema when, you know, Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader, even though we didn't get to see it for many, many years after he was already a heel. We won't talk about those movies because they don't exist to me. But what are some of you guys' favorite heel turns in wrestling? And I'm going to start with
Annie. Well, as you know, I'm kind of, just to refresh for anybody that's brand new to listening to this podcast. I have a lot of catching up to do as far as wrestling goes, right? Because, you know, when I was a kid, I couldn't tell you much of what I watched as a child. And then as I became an adult, which is only just a few years ago, I started kind of falling back into it. So I'm going to go with a turn that what did you just ask me? You just asked me a turn that
your favorite.
My favorite?
Turn. It doesn't have to be the greatest or the best.
Doesn't okay. So just talking about my favorite because it was something, and we just talked about him a second ago. For the longest time, I had been waiting for Finn Balor to turn because this whole smiley face, happy-go-lucky, you know, only mid-card most of the time, you know, using his fucking demon gimmick as a crutch. It was just kind of, I was getting sick of it for the longest time. Even on my old podcast, I kept telling my co-hosts, like, when can we see, you know, the Prince, you know, a la fucking NJPW, the guy who founded the Bullet Club, you know what I'm saying? The rock and roller, man. So when that happened, I got really fucking excited. And I'm one of those people that cheers for the bad guys, you know? So like, I'm all about the dark side, talking about Star Wars a second ago, you know, I'm all about Darth Vader and all that good stuff. So that kind of made me really happy. What did you say?
I'm all about chicks who are about the dark side.
Yeah, I'm all about the dark side.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a couple Finn Balor heel turns. His return to NXT, of course.
Yeah, and that's the one I'm speaking of specifically too. Is when he came back to NXT, and then all of a sudden we were like, "Oh shit! Okay, finally, there it is. There it is."
Go ahead, Tom.
The thing with Finn Balor is the lighter his trunks are, the worse he is.
Meaning like when he's walking like blues and
reds, but
red.
When he's darker tones, it means he's a heel, and that's when he's good.
Right. Makes sense. Look, visual aids are always important.
Well, you know, I mean, to his point, to Tyler's point too, look at the women that have their heel turns. You know, everything goes darker. The makeup, even the hair, you know, like the hair color changes. I remember when Io, you know, turned, like the hair got darker, the makeup gets darker. It's like an aesthetic thing, you know.
Even Bailey changed her hair when she went heel.
Well, let's not talk about her haircut because that was kind of
Even no spoilers, but Marty was in a red shirt. Shawn was in a black leather jacket.
You already know. I always said that about Bobby Brown. I know this has nothing to do with wrestling, but like there's a biopic about New Edition, and when they introduced Bobby Brown, he's like 8 years old and he's wearing red leather pants, and it's like, that kid's gonna lose his mind later. There's not a chance that you grow up to be a nice guy when you're a kid in red leather pants. That just is what it is. So yeah, no, the style of dress has a lot to do with, you know, your orientation as a good guy, bad guy, which is why, you know, because when looking back on it and people are like, oh, Stone Cold Steve Austin as a babyface was so revolutionary. And I'm like, was it really? but I guess because he wore all black and he wasn't the nicest guy ever is why it was so different for people.
But it was also kind of the beginning of like the anti-hero.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
What you just said, because I always looked at Stone Cold as being more of an anti-hero.
Yeah, I think Razor was the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, Razor's a good one. But one of the I actually just watched this video about how someone who doesn't get a lot of credit because he was kind of so trash, but like Psycho Sid in the 95 era was dumb over. Like, say what you will about him in ring, scissors to Arn Anderson, softball retreats, which caused him to miss dates. But when they brought him back to replace the Warrior, to tag with Shawn Michaels, and then they were going to turn him heel so that he could face Shawn for the title, people were all about it. People were popping hard for the Psycho one. And I mean, they say, Sid rules the world. In 95, he kind of did. He kind of did rule the fucking world. And I remember WWE really not knowing what to do with it. Like, even if you listen to the commentary during that time, there's a Shawn and Sid match specifically where Vince McMahon has no idea what to do. He is saying the exact opposite of what the crowd is doing in his commentary. He's like, and the crowd really behind the Heartbreak Kid. And it's like they are booing Shawn's ass like you wouldn't fucking believe. But and they didn't have the wherewithal to switch gears like the WrestleMania 18 match between Hulk Hogan and The Rock, where midway through they realized, oh, the fans are behind Hogan. We need to just switch how we do this mid-match, and it was beautiful. But I'm going off on a fucking tangent because the whole Bobby Brown thing makes me start talking a lot. Josh, what's your favorite heel turn?
I remember when Vince McMahon really embraced being a heel. He was kind of just a whatever, dabbing into heelism.
Mm-hmm.
But he went when he fully committed to it. That he is my ultimate heel. I think I've said it on previous podcast. He is the best heel in the business, and when he fully committed to being that heel, it was fucking great.
What would we call? What would you say is the moment that you can pinpoint? Vince McMahon himself says the birth of the Mr. McMahon character was on an obscure, somewhat obscure episode of Raw where Bret Hart kind of loses it and he's cursing out Vince McMahon, saying that he's always getting screwed in this company. Little did he know. But and that was the first time anyone was really kind of calling out Vince as the owner, and that's where Vince says that character sort of began. But what do you think is the moment, the exact moment where it was like, oh, that's Mr. McMahon, he's a bad guy, he's a heel?
Probably the screw job, right?
Would you say the screw job, or would you say the interview afterwards?
I think the screw job ended with oh, Vince did something.
Right.
So that's where the turn was. Although it's tough to say it was a turn because he was never really particularly a face. I agree he's debatably the greatest of all time, but there was no heel turn. It was a heel reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I don't know if that really counts as a heel turn. Because that one, and there's only one other heel turn that I remember that I never watched WCW ever. And when Hogan became a heel and joined the NWO, that's the biggest official full change into a heel that I still remember to this day.
Aesthetics too.
Yeah, I think that's probably the number one ever.
My number one Hogan heel turn is when he was recorded saying the N-word several times after having sex with his best friend. Best friend's wife, excuse me. I don't want to misrepresent you, Hulkster. Sorry. But Yeah, no, absolutely. Come on, Bash at the Beach '96 is the greatest heel turn of all time. Formation of NWO. We can get more into detail into that in a second. Tyler, what's up?
Did you quote it before intentionally?
What?
When you were introducing the concept of heel turns, I think you quoted Hulk Hogan in that post-match interview.
What did I say?
Something about like he called the audience a bunch of, I don't know it verbatim, but he called them like scumbags or something. And you said the word before when explaining it. That's how iconic the moment was.
Yeah, maybe subconsciously. Which was so, ironic for me because he wore nothing but black during that whole time period. Really fucked up. But what is your favorite heel turn besides, we'll talk about the Hogan one. But Tyler, your favorite?
I'm going to go with, favorite's tough, so I'm going to quantify it as like the ones that I remember being shocked by when I was a kid watching, not seeing it coming. Because I think that's the most important thing in a heel turn is the surprise factor. And looking back on it now, there's actually two that stand out. And looking back, they're both pretty easy to spot, and I'm embarrassed to say them. But in the moment as a child, I was shocked and blown away. When Triple H turned on DX in that Shane McMahon X-Pac match, and when Scott turned on Rick and joined the NWO. Neither of them memorable moments in like the annals of wrestling history, but both like really blew me away as a 10-year-old.
I remember both extremely well. The DX one definitely hit me hard, which is so interesting because there's been times where Triple H turned on DX, and then there's been times where they were his heel army. So it was just kind of like, just bring them with you, man. Just fucking bring the boys. Ain't no fun if the homies can't have none.
It's very similar to this Undisputed Era thing where like the faction goes face, so the main guy has to go heel again.
Yeah, totally.
And what's crazy about like the Triple H one is there's been several of those heel turns that into the corporate side that have worked really fucking well. You have like Shane and The Rock, that heel turn and then also Stone Cold as well.
I would almost argue, I mean, it's not the greatest heel turn of all time, but that Rock one was one of the most surprising ever because look, he was already a heel with the Nation of Domination when he returned, as Rocky Maivia after the whole die Rocky die, we hate you situation. And then he organically became a babyface where he was, all of a sudden the people's champion and, getting loud cheers and all this stuff. And then completely turns and sides with Vince McMahon. And it was just like it was so not what WWE did at the time. Like it was such a swerve and such a surprise that I remember being just like utterly shocked. Like, no, this is our guy now. The Rock's our fucking guy now. What do you mean he's still evil? Like it fucked my whole world up. Absolutely.
What percentage of people do you think who are like aware of The Rock as this international celebrity, what percentage know why he's called The Rock?
I think about that all the time when I see young children watch movies like Are We There Yet? And it's like, do they know why this actor is called Ice Cube? Or do they just think that people have really weird stage names? I don't know. I suppose that people have some context to him being a wrestler if you're young, but I can't for the life of me think how they would unless they tune into Young Rock, airing now on what, NBC, Peacock,
NBC,
like
yeah, NBC.
Right on. We might have somebody from that show coming up in the next few episodes. Maybe. I mean, look, I like to tease. But my favorite heel turn, and I can't believe it hasn't been brought up yet, Shawn Michaels, the barbershop window, guys. Come on. What are we talking about? I mean, HBK Marty Jannetty, the ill-fated, Rockers, who up to this point had a lot of success in WWE. They were really popular, super popular team, changed the game as far as the way that tag team wrestling was looked at in WWE as far as the athleticism was concerned. Two guys you think are going to be together forever, even though you kind of always knew Shawn was the goods. And apparently, historically, had a fist fight at a bar after Roddy Piper said such to them, basically like, yeah, Shawn's going to be a big star one day. And that's kind of all he had to say about the team, and which led to a fist fight between the Rockers. But yeah, I mean, I just remember loving them at the time, loving Shawn a little bit more, and then they were having issues. They hadn't officially won the tag team titles because the one win that they had over the Hart Foundation was never aired because the top rope actually collapsed in the middle of the match. And so Vince McMahon was like, oh, this looks like shit, so we're going to pretend like this never happened. And that's exactly what happened. The Rockers tag team title reign doesn't exist in the history books. But I so wanted them to be the champions. And then when they started having problems, I'm like, this is just going to be a bump in the road. Brothers fight. Friends argue. They're going to pull it together and win the tag team titles. No! Shawn is going to super kick Marty Jannetty in the face and then throw his head through a goddamn window. And while sad, I feel like it was warranted. I feel like it was deserved. That's just kind of where I'm at with the whole thing. Because of course that led to the Shawn Michaels Heartbreak Kid gimmick, and the rest is fucking history.
Who would have
Jannetty murdered a guy.
I was gonna say, who would have figured that 30 years later, Jannetty would finally make his heel turn and kill a Jamaican woman.
Yeah, absolutely. You never look. They say never in the World Wrestling Federation, and that's exactly where it's at.
You know what's so good about that heel turn was it was a really
which one, Marty or Shawn?
the Shawn one. It was a really well-written, well-planned segment, like script-wise, because they take you on the roller coaster of them actually making up first, and you kind of exhale a little bit first, and then they pull it off. Really, really good screenplay.
Yeah. Very reminiscent of later years when Ciampa finally turned on Gargano. They lose the belts, but it seems like they're still hanging in there in triumph. They put the NXT copyright logo up, which is always the signal to the end of the show. And then Gargano just fucking decks him, and just was like, they're not friends.
And I think there's just something additionally heavy about a tag team splitting up because one turns heel. Those hit extra hard.
I mean, definitely impactful because it seems like that's the only way WWE knows how to split up tag teams nowadays. I mean, they hate tag teams as it is, and they split them up in 2 months. But unless you're Ziggler and Rude, who I guess have a fucking blood bond that's never going to separate the two of them.
Didn't the Iconics just have a last match and then that was it?
That was kind of it. Yeah. Only so that, fucking Peyton Royce could get in a tag team with Lacey Evans for some reason. But
we'll get into that later.
Yeah. The Shawn Michaels thing, I mean, just so impactful for me. And it just seemed hella violent at the time. You know what I mean? There's a lot of, I'll turn on you and attack you and just kind of beat you up a little bit. But seeing someone get thrown through glass like that, obviously it was a market, a supermarket at the time. I didn't realize that it was all, staged or whatnot. And it was probably pretty damn safe. But I mean, it was a hell of a visual.
And also worth mentioning the value menu Shawn Michaels heel turn when he kicks Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, where the fuck did Brutus Beefcake go in that segment? I've always asked that question for years and years. Where he was hosting the segment, he was clapping as they held their arms up. And then when Shawn kicks him, he's just nowhere to be found.
It's the answer to that question is the same answer to the question of where was that ref who started the countdown during the Kevin Owens Roman Reigns match? Where did that ref go to? Same answer.
Is that ref's last name Beefcake? So they just have an issue with disappearing.
Part of the WWE universe is the WWE limbo, where things just kind of exist.
Yeah.
But Brutus does rush in pretty quickly to, I guess, take care of Marty.
Yeah, for sure. Good
Question for you guys. Do you think the fact that we didn't mention the Mega Powers, is that just an age thing, you think?
Well, I was going to bring that up.
That isn't up there?
Well, I was going to bring it up because we talked about the Hogan NWO, heel turn Bash at the Beach 96. But I would almost bring up Mega Powers exploding. And before that, Andre the Giant turning heel to set up WrestleMania 3. I mean, WrestleMania 3 is maybe the most important pay-per-view that WWE's ever had in shaping the company to what it was going to become. And, Andre was never a heel. He was always the jovial, jolly giant with the big hair and who never challenged for titles. He was just this attraction that you love to see. Except for, I guess, those stints where he would wrestle as the giant machine under that mask, which is some obscure Andre history that you guys should go ahead and look up. Josh has the shirt. But Andre himself, him showing up at what was the Brother Love show with Bobby Heenan as his manager and Hogan. That's some of Hogan's best acting, by the way. What are you doing here with him, brother? And the whole thing. And then Andre getting upset because he's never gotten a title shot against Hogan. It's just damn good stuff. And like
What are you talking about, Chris? Hogan was so much better in No Holds Barred. Okay?
Oh my God.
But his acting performance was...
I thought you were going to bring up Thunder in Paradise. But it's just, look, I can think of main events that are maybe on par, but not a main event bigger than Hogan Andre, WrestleMania 3.
And I'm also a little blown away that Hogan Andre is the only chain snatching angle I could think of.
Right. That's how strong and terrifying Andre the Giant is. He snatched a chain off of Hogan's chest, and that fucker started bleeding. That's never happened to me.
You also got to give credit to Hulk Hogan's neck, though, that he didn't just get yanked.
Yeah, totally. Has anyone ever snatched anything off of your chest, Andy, that made it start bleeding?
Actually, yes. Yeah.
Is there a story attached to this? Oh, okay, there it is. No, I don't want to hear that story now that I know what it is.
Yeah, you don't.
Absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. But yeah, so a heel turn to set up the biggest main event of all time in WWE, and a heel turn to cap off the greatest storyline in the history of WWE, the Mega Powers exploding. So it's because while Andre was this huge attraction and a huge star to be a perfect foil for Hogan, Macho Man and Hogan, I think, was the first time the WWE had experienced two main event star baby faces that were on such a level. They were both so popular, both so huge. We got it later with with Austin and Rock, but this was really the first time we had that. And so to see the jealousy and rage and suspicion build in Macho Man to where he finally fucking just snaps and belts Hogan one time. I was always on Savage's side, by the way, in that whole thing. But that was absolutely huge too. Would you say that Hogan 96 outshines those two by a whole lot, or are they kind of on the same level?
I think 96 is more important just because Hogan was used as this heel turn device for so long. They did Andre, they did Savage, they even did Slaughter. They did so many someone's going bad to face Hogan that it built up to the importance of 96 where Hogan finally goes bad. Publicly.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like it's one of those situations where it's exactly what you expect them to eventually do with John Cena. Like this guy's been a face his entire fucking career, and you're like, oh, this person's never going to ever go heel. And when Hogan went heel, you're like, oh, I'm seeing something I thought I would never see in my life ever. It's always going to be red and yellow for my entire life, and it fucking changed.
Which goes to show you how impactful a babyface Hogan really was, because I mean, look, obscure mark history. When Hogan debuted in WWF, he was a heel. He was managed by classy Freddie Blassie. He was basically Thunderlips, his character in Rocky 3. And he was kind of the same kind of character, but then he got let go, went back to the AWA. That's where the whole Hulkamania thing got started, and then they brought him back to New York. But that is such a blip in history because of how powerful Hulkamania was, and so we don't even associate Hogan with ever being a heel before NWO.
And then by the time he got to WCW, like 94, 95, 96, Hogan was pretty stale and washed up and on his legs. That heel turn gave him a whole second half to his career.
Absolutely. Can you think of any other wrestlers who've never worked heel?
Rey Mysterio.
Rey Mysterio is one I was thinking of. I always think of Ricky Steamboat because on an old interview, Ric Flair was asked who would be the greatest if not for him, and he says Steamboat only, but Steamboat can't be the greatest because he never worked heel. But yeah, him and Mysterio are the only two I can really think of. You guys think of any, Annie, Josh?
The
I was actually thinking
gobbledygooker
this whole time
never
when you
turned
mentioned
heel.
Cena. Who?
Gobbledygooker never turned heel. Always been a good guy.
Okay. Well, I'll show you the Gobbledygooker one day, Annie. That sounded horribly dirty. It's a wrestling thing, I promise.
That totally did, by the way.
I promise it's a wrestling thing.
I know he's a pretty heelish off camera, but in ring, was Warrior ever a heel?
You know what? I think the Blade Runners were initially. He was never the heel as the Ultimate Warrior. As the Dingo Warrior, yeah. Ultimate Warrior, no. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
I'm actually looking this up right now, wrestlers who never turned heel, and I think you're right. Ultimate Warrior never did turn heel.
I mean, unless you knew him.
All right, exactly. Jim Hellwig was a heel. Ultimate Warrior, babyface. What are some of
What
the
about
worst?
ones that never turned face?
Ooh.
Sorry, go ahead.
Rick Rude? I don't think Rick Rude was ever a babyface. Fuck.
Yeah, I can't think of any.
Bundy?
Yeah, that's much harder. King Kong Bundy, maybe?
Was Doink ever a face?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I couldn't remember. I only remember heel Doink.
Doink had the little people with him. You can't be a heel when you have little people with you.
Unless you're Jerry.
Hornswoggle?
Great one. That's a great one. Hornswoggle's been evil. Even Eugene has been evil.
Oh yeah.
Damn, that is really good. That's a great question.
Speaking of the Shawn Michaels one, I was thinking the other day, if you had to if you're looking at the greatest wrestlers ever, and you had to classify them as a heel or face for their career, what would you call Shawn Michaels?
It depends which act. I guess that's against the question, but
because there's probably more total time spent as a face, I want to say, but I think his best work was as a heel.
Because it's like 92 to 95, Shawn is a heel, pretty much.
And later, DX too.
But then like 96, 97, he's a face. Then 97, he to 98, he's out. And then when he comes back, he's a face. And he only turns heel to fight, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. But
that's it.
But when he goes out, he's a heel.
The original DX, Shawn Michaels heel. So, I don't know. It's tough. Tweener. I'm going tweener.
Question for you. Didn't Spike? I don't recall Spike Dudley ever going heel. Did he?
He did.
Okay. For whatever reason, I'm drawing a blank on it.
Spike Dudley it was like a cruiserweight angle where he joined the Dudleys. And he turned
yeah. They became on the same page finally for a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Damn, that is a great question. Listeners out there, if you can hit us on Twitter at WrestleFPod, let us know some wrestlers who never went babyface. That's a great question. I love that.
I got someone who never went babyface. Lars Sullivan never went babyface.
Made that whole interview about how he gets bullied.
Yeah. There's an answer. There's definitely an answer.
Iron Sheik?
Iron Sheik, maybe. Bobby the Brain Heenan was definitely never a babyface. Except for the one moment where he was telling us that he was right about Hulk Hogan all those years in '96.
Can you have a babyface commentator? Because I don't recall Gorilla Monsoon ever being like a heel commentator ever.
Yeah. And Ventura was always the heel commentator, or Bobby.
Yeah, right. It was, but it was always like you weren't necessarily babyface. It was like you were neutral or heel, kind of.
Like the wiser you get, the more you mature, the more you realize the heels are usually right.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. What are some of the worst heel turns that you can remember? Ones that just did not work for you. You can almost say that about Big Show's whole career. That dude has gone from babyface to heel. I mean, it is like a Wheel of Fortune board with this guy. What are some that you can think of, Tyler?
Definitely the Sergeant Slaughter one was pretty wild.
When he was the Saddam Hussein sympathizer, you mean?
Yeah, after like a decorated 20-year career of being like the G.I. Joe character. I mean, I guess it definitely worked.
In his manner of speaking?
Yeah, it was just like this guy's really past his prime and not in great shape, and now he has to fight Hulk Hogan. It never really felt like the odds were against Hogan.
No, absolutely not.
I also have a song. I really love the one where Flair goes face to tag with Sting, and he's wearing like dress pants, and then he turns on him right away.
Sting should have known better. Flair has turned on Sting so many times. Sting was a horseman for 2 days. And then they fucking beat the shit out of him immediately. Like, no. That's on Sting. That's Sting's fault. Annie, can you think of some really bad
I'm
heel
actually
turns?
thinking right now, so can you skip me for now?
Sure. Josh.
There can only be one bad heel turn, and that has to be the American Badass, The Undertaker. That is the worst heel.
You didn't like Dead Man Inc.? I'll Make It Famous, Undertaker? Or Booger Red, as he tried to get going for a little while?
No one liked it.
Okay. Well, Mark Calloway really liked it.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll say this. I thought so too. I thought people hated American Badass literally until the Boneyard match. And then I just saw this outpouring of people being like, oh yeah, American Badass was the best Undertaker. And it's like, you are the pineapple on pizza people. You guys are sociopaths. Absolute sociopaths to feel that way.
I think that's just people love nostalgia, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he did that too. We love him." It's for that.
Even though I kind of liked, I created basically fan fiction in my head of like the longer the undead Undertaker wrestled, he sort of was revived back to life, and then he was killed again and became the dead man again, and that's what made him the cowboy dead man. And I had this whole thing in my head. We don't need to get into it, but yeah, I wasn't a fan.
I have one. If Annie, are you ready?
I'm not. I can't. I'm still thinking. Go ahead.
I think one of the it's not technically a horrible heel turn, but it's one of the biggest missed opportunities for what could have been one of the greatest is when Austin turns on WWF to like lead WCW in the Invasion.
Yeah.
Was kind of a fumble.
Well, I always thought that because well, he was already a heel, sort of. I mean, he was a heel. He was part of the two-man power trip, and then Triple H got hurt, so it was just the one-man power trip. And that was already a fumble because the fans weren't ready for that yet. But, you know, crazy Austin singing songs with the fucking guitar, and then Kurt Angle, you know, the whole Jimmy Crack Corn, teeny cowboy hat. There's a lot of cowboy mentions on this episode, but that was some good shit. But I'm with you, because once he turned to the Alliance side, and then that's when the what chant kind of started, and that's when he was just like, I don't know, his character had zero direction at the time. I always thought that they should have called him, he should have went back to Stunning Steve at the time. It's like, if you're going to be part of the WCW angle, use your WCW gimmick, right?
Yeah. The sketch comedy in that era was definitely Kurt Angle. Wrestling booking was not.
Right. Absolutely. Have you come to one, Annie?
No.
I'm gonna go with what is another really, really bad one then? Oh, when David Flair joined the NWO Elite. Ugh. That was horrible.
You know what I find a hilarious one? Personally, for personal reasons, is when Bret Hart goes anti-America, but is still.
Oh my God! Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
No, yeah, cheered loudly at every Canadian event.
Like,
booed out of the building at every United States event. That was great. That was great stuff.
Heel Bret Hart in Canada is one of the most over wrestlers ever.
For sure. If you have not watched In Your House Canadian Stampede, the proof is in the pudding. They boo the shit out of Austin, the Patriot, Ken Shamrock, the LOD. The Hart Foundation are gods that evening. Absolute gods.
A heel turn that didn't work, and I wish it worked because when Rikishi became a heel. I remember that moment. Like Rikishi,
horrible.
Like you think like someone's so lovable, and as a face, you're like, oh, when he's heel, it's gonna be fucking great. Because I fucking love Rikishi as a face. He was a great wrestler in my opinion. And when he healed, it's like, oh, this is going nowhere against Stone Cold of all people.
Yeah, and you can't.
Did it for The Rock.
Yeah, did it for you, but you can't really be like this maniacal, evil heel when like your ass is sticking out and you still rub it in people's faces.
Like Otis will never be able to go heel,
right?
And also do the caterpillar.
Yeah.
I think it just provided clarity. It's an awful thing to force someone's head in between your asshole. I mean, we didn't think so until he became a bad guy. Then it was like, oh yeah, that's not cool. You shouldn't do that to people. There's consent issues, guys.
Question: Did Yokozuna ever go face, or was he always kind of a heel?
He went babyface a little bit. He turned
on
Camp Cornette.
Couldn't remember.
But the Rikishi one, was that the plan all along, or was that like an audible and they went with it?
I think no. I if I remember correctly, it wasn't supposed to be Rikishi initially. It was supposed to be like one of the NWO or something like that. I think maybe, but I don't. They needed to pull an audible for whatever reason, and that's when we got also the worst Hell in a Cell bump of all time too, when Rikishi fell into the back of a truck full of fucking sawdust and shit. It was just like, all right, cool, thanks. Thanks for playing. Yeah, some modern examples of great heel turns. Of course, the Roman Reigns recently, that's got us this Tribal Chief storyline going on. One amazing one that was a heel turning on a heel, the Festival of Friendship. The fucking Kevin Owens turning on Chris Jericho. That was, I mean, Chris, you want to talk about good acting. Jericho getting the gift, talking about how much he loves it, looking up with a smile on his face, asking why his name is on the list. I mean, and then just getting destroyed by Kevin Owens. I mean, dude, how do you go in 7 seconds making me care that much about a fucking heel getting beat up? Like 7 seconds. That's just incredible work. Incredible work.
And another memorable one in recent memory, I would say, is Seth Rollins turning on the Shield.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Just so you know, Chris, just so you know from personal experience, 7 seconds is a very long time.
What could you be referring to, Josh?
Subscribe to patreon.com/WrestleFetish and you can hear what it is.
I love it. Gotta push. Yeah. That is our in-depth, amazing look at... Oh, actually, before we wrap it up, let's talk about a couple double turns where babyface, going into a match, there is a babyface and then there was a heel. But at the end of the match, those roles have reversed. I mean, look, I'm pretty sure the greatest example is WrestleMania 13. Steve Austin comes in as the babyface. Bret Hart comes in as the heel. Excuse me. Switch it, reverse it. See, I already reversed it in my head. Bret Hart comes in as the babyface. Steve Austin comes in as the heel. Bret won't let go of the sharpshooter. Steve Austin passes out while bloodied in the sharpshooter. Shows the world how much of a tough SOB he is. Crowd all about Austin. Hates Bret at the end of the match. Unbelievable stuff. WrestleMania 13. One fucking classic. The only other one I can really think of is a weird one. It's Dolph Ziggler versus Alberto Del Rio, where Alberto Del Rio was the babyface, again, unless you knew him. And fucking Dolph Ziggler was the heel, and they had seeded that Dolph was sort of injured, like had an injured leg or whatever, or arm or something like that. And Del Rio just kept putting him in these submission holds, fucking with his injury to the point where the fans were really like, dude, enough. He's hurt. Stop. Leave Dolph alone. And they were 100% behind Dolph by the end of the match. And that's what led to him eventually becoming a fan favorite. And Del Rio went on as a heel champion after that. Any others that you guys can think of?
Would you classify the Rock Hogan match? Rock didn't really go heel though, did he?
I mean, he went heel enough in the heat of the moment, I would say.
So there's one.
You kind of know when a podcast needs to end when you're talking about a match between Alberto Del Rio and Dolph Ziggler. That's when you know, like, this podcast probably should have ended 5 minutes ago.
I can't really argue with that, my friend. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that as the tide turning on this episode. Hope you enjoyed our in-depth talk about heel turns. We'll be back next week with another topic. Don't turn on us in the meantime. Follow us on all the things WrestleFpod on Twitter, WrestleFetish1 on Facebook. We just launched the YouTube page at WrestleFetish, so if you want to go on there and see the full video there, you can do that as well. You guys want to plug anything before we get out of here? Tyler?
At Lemco, buy a shirt from Josh.
Josh?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
At Josh Martin Comic. I have no more shirts because I burned them all to stay warm in Texas.
Makes sense. Annie?
At Any fucking Cruz on Twitter, at Any Cruz on the gram, actwitch.com.
I love it. I love it. Follow me at Chris_please if you care what pictures I'm putting up with celebrities that I may have met at one point in my life. Other than that, enjoy your day and stay horny. For wrestling.